Welcome to grammarondemand.com. Today we're going to talk about adverbs and adjectives. Now, people always think that this is a very difficult subject, and I suppose it isn't easy, but I don't think it's very difficult either. First of all, you need to know when you use an adjective and when you use an adverb. Now, an adjective tells us something about a noun. The big house, big tells us something about house. Now, house is a noun, so this means that big is an adjective. He's a good tennis player. Good tells us something about tennis player. Tennis player is a noun, so that must mean that good is an adjective. Now, an adverb tells us something about a verb, adjective, or another adverb. Now, this is easy to remember because adverb actually contains the word verb, of course. So he's walking quickly. Quickly tells us something about walking. Walking is a verb. You can check that by saying I walk, you walk, we walk, etc. It's a verb. So that must mean that quickly is an adverb. He's an extremely terrible driver. Now, extremely tells us something about terrible. Terrible is an adjective because terrible tells us something about driver. So terrible is an adjective, and the word that says something about an adjective is an adverb. Now, if you have something to do with an adjective, you will see that nothing changes. There's no change in spelling. This makes it very easy, of course. So if you know that you're dealing with an adjective, you have to change absolutely nothing. That means that with adverbs, the spelling does change. With most adverbs, you add the letters ly, ly. But of course, there are a few exceptions. If a word ends on le, it turns into ly. Now, you might say that that's exactly the same as just the rest of the adverbs, but the difference is we don't add li, we change it into li. That's the difference. So horrible, you don't put li behind that, you change it into li. Horrible becomes horribly. If a word ends on a y, it turns into illy. So easy becomes easily. If a word ends on ic, it becomes ickily. Now, the problem with this is that you don't hear it in your pronunciation. So fantastic becomes fantastically, but you actually write fantastically. And then, of course, there's good, which turns into a different word entirely. It turns into well. So good is the adjective and well is the adverb. There are also words that just don't change. Fast, hard, long, high, low, and late. They just don't change. Whether they're an adjective or an adverb, there's no li ever. Now, there are more words like this, but these 6 are the most important ones. So, if you say he drives fast, fast is an adverb, but there's no li. Now, after the verb to be, to feel, to look, to taste, to smell, and to seem, there's never an adverb, but always an adjective. The neighbor's dog is nice. Now, this is a form of to be, of course. Now, nice actually says something about the neighbor's dog, which is a noun. So that's why it's an adjective. He looks terrible. Now, terrible says something about the way he looks. So actually it says something about him. So that means that terrible is an adjective because it says something about a noun, basically. And this food tastes awful. Awful says something about the taste, but the taste says something about the food. So awful says something about the food. So that means that awful is an adjective and not an adverb. Let's look at some examples. Jerry is a learner. Now, is slow an adjective or an adverb? Let's take a look. Slow says something about learner. Now, learner is a noun. That means that slow is an adjective, and with an adjective, nothing changes. So, Jerry is a slow learner is a perfect sentence. Michelle draws. Let's take a look. Beautiful. It says something about the way Michelle draws. So it says something about draws. Now, draw is a verb. I draw, you draw, etc. That means that we have to add ly. Michelle draws beautifully because it says something about a verb. Now we have to do two words. Now, to make this easier, I recommend that you always do the second word first. So, horrible. Horrible says something about cook. He is a horrible cook. Now, cook is a noun. It's someone who cooks. So, horrible is an adjective, so nothing changes. It just stays horrible, because an adjective, the spelling just doesn't change. Now, extreme says something about how horrible he is in cook. So extreme says something about horrible. How horrible? Extremely horrible. So extremely is an adverb, so we have to add ly. I already did that. He is an extremely horrible cook. Extremely says something about horrible, and horrible says something about cook. So we have an adjective that says something about a noun and an adverb that says something about an adjective. My grandmother's house smells... Again, we're going to do the second one first. Now, nice says something about smells, but smells was one of the exceptions. With smells, you never get an adverb, you always get an adjective, because the smell actually says something about my grandmother's house. So nice just stays the same then, because nice will be an adjective. Now, how nice? Real nice. So that means that real says something about nice. Now, this is an adverb that says something about an adjective, so we have to add ly. My grandmother's house smells really nice. So nice says something about my grandmother's house. That means it's an adjective that says something about a noun. And really tells us something about nice. So this is an adverb telling us something about an adjective. Now, I've told you about adverbs and adjectives. I've told you when to use an adjective and when to use an adverb. I've told you that with an adjective, the spelling never changes. And with an adverb, it sometimes does, but there are a lot of exceptions. So I would recommend that you watch this video again, because it is a lot to take in. But if you've understood it after the first time, that's of course great. Now, for more videos and exercises, check grammarondemand.com. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video if it has helped you. And maybe check out some of my other videos.